To make sure things run smoothly, the responsibility goes to the man in charge of the whole operation, Richard King, the overall contest director.
We will have London for Romeo, for the USSR, Smith Brown for the United Kingdom, and Anderson Goulet for Sweden.
Steve Smith and Colin Brown, you've just come from a heat against the Soviet Union in Sweden. How did it go?
Terrible.
Terrible.
That seems pretty conclusive. What was the matter particularly?
We have a total lack of equipment this year, engine parts mainly.
What engines are you using?
We're using Italian engines, and they just changed manufacturer, or the people that manufacture the things, and therefore I think there's going to be a little bit of time before they sort the problems out.
Is it still triple, or is it anything? I mean, a silly question this, but what would you say basically from a sort of lay point of view is the difference between a good team racing engine and a stock off-the-shelf 2.5 diesel?
Bits and finishes. Yeah, bits and finishes, bits and materials. Yeah. And the materials are a little bit tricky to use. Chrome and aluminium for the liners, and aluminium pistons. It's getting the right selection of material.
Okay, of course, basically with the team race diesel, you're looking not only for speed and power, but you're looking for economy. How do you particularly go for economy?
Screw the needle in.
What about the fuel mixtures? Any special secrets on fuels?
No real secrets. Currently we're having problems with consistency and paraffin quality, so we're actually using Jet A1 for jet aeroplanes.
That's aviation kerosene, yeah, I see. That's fairly consistent. Well, that's a relief for those of us who fly big ones, anyhow. I see. You've both been world and European champions in the past. What would you say was your toughest race?
Toughest race? I think they're all tough, really.
Any stand out special in your mind as being perhaps especially satisfying? Maybe the ones you won?
Yes, I think so.
Championships in Chicopee in the United States.
What other countries have you flown in?
Russia, Budapest, Hungary, Sweden twice, Belgium. Where else? Forget all the countries. France.
How many years have you been flying team race?
I've been flying for too many.
1963, isn't it?
Since maybe 64.
We're looking about 25, 26 years experience. What's the special appeal for you of team race as opposed to, say, radio or free flight or aerobatics or speed?
For us, I think it's competitive. You do get a bit of a buzz, adrenaline going when you're racing. It's got a little more physical side to it than maybe the other sides of the hobbies.
Yeah.
You are totally involved. And it's not all model or engine, which is nice, for us especially.
Yeah. Let's have a look at this aeroplane now. It's a flying wing. Now, why particularly have you chosen a flying wing layout?
Well, the reason for that was for strength, really. It keeps the weight as light as possible, no tail hanging out the back. And when you catch the model very fast, the old days with the tailplane models, they used to whip round and break off as you caught the model. So now you've got nothing really to break off. A lot of cord, so that you can keep the wood fairly light. And although the model wasn't built with, should we say, good flying in mind, it turned out to be the perfect aeroplane for very windy conditions.
And it's now used almost universally internationally.
Yeah.
The rules, of course, lay down a minimum wing area, a maximum engine size, a maximum fuel tank capacity, and a cross-section area, or not?
Yes, cross-section.
Yeah. So within those limits, you need to design the fastest, most efficient aircraft you can. What sort of speeds do you think it's doing when you're catching it?
So somewhere around about actual into the hand, around about 25 miles an hour, possibly less, because it is slowing off quite quickly. And a very rapid start could be 30
I had wondered at times whether that could be 50 miles an hour time, to be honest.
It's when it stings a bit, is it?
Not necessarily. It's like catching a cricket ball.
You don't use gloves, just bare hands?
Well, I use a glove, but just for grip, really, to hang on to the wheel.
But not for starting?
Partly for starting, because I use a baseball pitcher's glove with tape on the finger, because the carbon fibre pellets are so sharp, the trailer edge, that it does cut through the tape. So if you don't use a glove or tape, it'll cut through your finger.
You mould your own carbon props, of course?
I do personally. A friend of ours, Andy Wharton, moulds our propellers for us. we're currently using.
And what sort of RPM and what sort of BHP do you think you get out of a 2.5 diesel then?
I would estimate in the air RPM varies at this competition, varies somewhere around about 22, 23,000. Possibly the Italian Capolas, Gino Vigera, probably approaching 24, 25,000 RPM. BHP is very difficult to estimate, but
Over one.
one and a quarter maybe.
Yeah, and what sort of airspeed would that give you?
Us, I think we're currently flying at about 115, 110 miles an hour. The fast Russians are around about 130.
And how many laps on a tank?
35, if we're lucky. Some people will go for 26 laps, 3 stops, if they've got the pace to do it.
So,
Extra airspeed though.
so on a heat, what, that's 10 kilometres a heat?
Mhm.
How many pit stops would you find you're doing in a 10 kilometre heat?
Normally two.
And what sort of time would you spend catching, refuelling, restarting and launching?
Actually on the ground, probably around 4 seconds. Total time loss, maximum 7 seconds.
7 seconds from airborne to airborne.
Time loss.
Yeah. You'll be flying again today. Who's your main opposition, would you think, here at the European Championships?
Obviously the Russian team, three strong Russian teams. The Italian teams, 2 Italian teams are very strong. The Swedes have done quite a good time, I think.
I think this particular year, everybody's going to be difficult for us.
I noticed quite a few of the team race pilots are quite tall guys. Now, you're not too tall, Steve. Do you find that a problem at all or not?
It can be, if I get very tall people, but generally speaking, it's not too much of a problem for me.
Yeah.
Providing the judges are sympathetic.
Let's have a look at your arm collar in a minute. Is that some nasty disease you've got? Tell us about the bottle.
This bottle is an old Volkswagen Beetle pressure washing bottle for the windscreen wash. It's really just as a pressure vessel. And we can see the fuel level just probably about 500 cc's of fuel, and then we pump it up to around about 7 psi. Because of the big volume, it does give a constant pressure. There's no variation in pressure, very little during the race.
Put your finger up in the air a minute. That's a nasty disease.
Right.
So we've got the
dreaded finger valve.
And that basically is a non-return valve, so it blows the
Non-return
fuel
valve.
out straight into the tank, so you don't have to think about
Yes, that's
filling it
right.
up. I don't think you can get better information on team race than from a couple of World and European champions like Steve Smith and Colin Brown. Thanks a lot. Thank you.
And to the circle now we have Marty Serafini on red for Italy, Smith Brown on white for the United Kingdom, and Nantes Boromir on blue for the USSR.
The Italians, Nagli and Pirazzini, having suffered badly during starting, put in a slow time and eventually came in 8th. The Russian team made a bad mistake during the pit stop and did not complete. Eventually being placed 4th. Smith and Brandherber went on to win this heat, but not fast enough. They were finally placed 9th overall. British team Sladin and Gardner did a little better, although an early retirement placed them 6th overall. In the finals, the Bulgarian team had their problems. The final result was first Burkov and Soraya for the USSR, Boghera and Rossi from Italy came second, whilst in third place Bodurkov and Popov from Bulgaria had to retire. Well, Joe Holman, you've got rather an important job here. Would you like to tell me what it is, please?
Yes, surely. I'm the event director for Speed, and it's important in that the whole pyramid is built upon the foundation of lots and lots of different helpers and organisers through processing, through practice, through our official flying. And I'm at the top of that little triangle, making sure it all works correctly and coordinating, making sure we don't have any problems. If we do have problems, making sure we have solutions to those problems.
Do you find that being a woman impairs the job at all?
No, I think actually it helps a little bit. It's male dominated, as you can see, and I think a woman has a particular place of cooling things down, getting through to people sometimes where perhaps another man might have a bit of a head-to-head. We can be nice.
Calm the situation down a bit.
We can do, yes. That's right.
How long have you actually been doing Speed?
Involved with Speed, particularly, I think my first European Championship would be in '74. It was the first time I actually got abroad to a championship. But really, it was ever since I married Peter, who of course is one of the members of the British team. And Speed is our life.
I then spoke with Peter Holman and asked him about his recent world record.
Yes, in fact it was 3 years ago I got the world record. It's the 5cc control line world record, which I took using the Irvine 21R 3.5cc engine. And it was 194 miles an hour. It's 312 kph is the record I got.
How does that compare with the Russians? Because I believe you took it from them, didn't you?
That's correct. The previous record was 187 miles an hour. So it was quite a big jump.
And how has it progressed since then?
Well, nobody has attacked it yet.
They haven't?
No.
Perhaps we'll see some here this week.
But it's quite difficult to attack it because you have to break the record by 2% to make a claim, which means somebody's got to do nearly 200 miles an hour. And on that size of wire, it becomes very difficult to actually get around the pylon at that speed.
You also work and are part of the organisation of the Irvine engines, and I believe you design and manufacture the engines yourself. Can you tell me a little about the Irvine engine that you're using here?
Yes, that's correct. We're using here the Irvine 15R, which is a product which we started off on the project just after we got the world 5cc record. Ron said, right, let's make a 2.5, get the thing drawn up and get it produced. It took a year to get the first one going, and then 2 years ago in Sweden, the first prototype was flown in the competition. I did 283 kph, and I think I was about 9th. It surprised a few people. We were happy with the way it went, and it's gradually progressed over the last 2 years. We're going quicker and quicker, and now hopefully we can challenge on a serious basis. Over 290 kph is the best we've done so far.
Good, isn't it? And all the team are using this engine, I believe?
All the team are using the engine, yes.
Team member Dick McClevery looks in pain. He was only able to put in one time of 279.43 kilometres per hour, which put him in 9th place overall. Left-handed Frenchman Jean Magny was unable to put in a time at all, whilst the Russian Kalmakov put in one short appearance in the first round and put in a good time of 297.19 kilometres per hour. He wasn't seen again until the presentation. Paul Eisner from the Ombris Model Club, however, put in 3 good times. I asked Paul to explain a little about the pylons.
This is an FA F2A flying handle, and what you see here is the pylon yoke that the speed flyer must enter before any speed flight can be timed. The handle is specially designed to fit into the pylon yoke, where the two bars on the handle must locate in the yoke before the timekeepers start timing the model. You'll notice also that the handle is strapped to the pilot's wrist to prevent the pilot letting go of the model should anything go wrong. At takeoff, the pull on the lines is very light since the model is flying fairly slowly, probably 50, 60 miles an hour. The pull is maybe only 10 or 15 pounds. But when flying at speed up to 180 miles an hour, then the pull can be 55 or 60 pounds in flight. So consequently, the wrist strap is an important safety device in case the pilot gets into trouble. Generally, what would happen is that a pilot would take off out of the pylon, and once airborne, he would grab hold of the pylon with his left hand, whip the model up to speed, and then enter the pylon with the bars located in the yoke thus. If he flies and enters that way round, the flight is disallowed. He's not allowed to do that. He must come in behind. There have been a number of instances where pilots have crossed the bars like that, and at the moment that is not allowed. He will then remain in that position, running round the pylon until the flight is over. What actually happens is he flies for 2 warm-up laps in the pylon. On the third time the model passes a marker on the opposite side to the timekeepers, the watches are started. He then flies for a further 10 laps, which is the 1 kilometre course. The watches are stopped. The pilot then comes out of the pylon and shuts the model off.
This propeller here is similar to the one which was seen earlier, which was one of the Russian propellers, and this is in fact a copy of one which I got from Kalmikov a couple of years ago. It differs from the propeller I use in a couple of points, and it tends to have a straight trailing edge and a curved leading edge, whereas the propeller I've been using is tapered in both directions. Also, the pitch distribution is slightly different. They have a larger cuff and a greater pitch at the root than I have on mine. To balance the propellers, I use a steel counterweight which is bolted behind the propeller and held between the nut and the back of the spinner assembly. And when it's fitted on the aeroplane, it all looks like this. You can see the whole thing is very neat. The counterweight is held inside the spinner cone, so A, it's safer, and B, it's a much cleaner airflow, and all you've got is the one blade then coming out of the spinner.
Peter then showed me one of the more successful Russian F2A engines.
The plug is a separate piece with a clamp screw, and then that's one part of the head that's held in with a further clamp ring. Instead of having bolts, it's screwed together. Front race is held in with a screw clamp, so that there's no end float on the outside of the race in the housing, and all the end float on the shaft is then controlled on the float on the bearing.
I then asked Paul to explain what happens to an aircraft before it can fly.
We're here at the F2A speed, control line speed line check. There are a number of checks carried out here to each model before it is allowed to fly. The first check is a check on the line length, which must be 52 foot 2 3/4 long. The pilot comes to the line check and places his handle in a yoke. It's just happening now at one end of the check. The other end, the model spinner is pointed to the angled plate on the ground, and which is the centre line of the model, and if it's passed on length, then it's allowed to proceed to the next check, which is a pull test. The model is pulled to 40 times its bare weight by a man with a pair of scales, and that's happening now to one model. That is done 3 times up to pull, and then released each time. After that, the pull test, the lines are checked for diameter in 3 places along the length of the wires. They must not measure less than 0.389 millimetres. The nominal size is 0.4 millimetres, a tolerance is allowed, but if they're below 0.389, then that is not allowed. The final check that is done is a check to ensure that only the official fuel is used for the flight. The modeller is given fuel, which you see now being poured into a bottle from the official fuel supply. He then fills his tank and flushes it completely to make sure he has nothing else other than the official fuel. He's then given more fuel for the flight and allowed to enter the circle to fly.
With the top 10 places being dominated by the East Europeans, the UK team were in there with 3 of these places. And although Peter Holman lost his best aircraft in a crash during practice, he was making good times with his reserve aircraft. That third round flight was good enough for third place at 295.73 kilometres per hour, only 1.46 kilometres per hour slower than Kalmykov's first place. Paul Eisner finished in 7th place with a second round score of 282.94 kilometres per hour. With the presentation being somewhat informal, the 2 Russians Kalmykov and Pitskalev appeared for their first and second place medals, even though they were awarded the wrong ones. By the time the combat finalists were awarded their places, the recording of the Russian anthem was worn out. But this did not deter the celebrations.